Tonight's focus, the size of the emirate under Muhammadu Sanusi II, that's the Emir of Kano, has been reduced to 10 out of 44 local government areas in the state. Also, we'll be looking at the Court of Appeal in Abuja, nullifying the judgment of the Osun State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal. Well, this is Plus Politics, and I'm David Alabi. Now, Kano State has 5 emirates, that's Rano, Gaya, Karaye and Bichi, and 5 emirs of equal jurisdiction. And is this politics, or is this destroying a century-long culture and tradition of Kano? Well, joining me now in our Lagos studio, we have public affairs analyst Dipo Olayoku. Good evening. Yeah, David, good evening. Now, good evening. That's one of the biggest questions now. Is this plain politics, or are we destroying an age-long tradition? From which angle do you see this from? Which lens are you looking at?
I'm looking at it as from the dynamism in culture and tradition, because this thing shouldn't be static, because as new things are coming up, there should be new ways of doing things, new thinking. But that doesn't remove the fact that a lot of politicking is what we are seeing, especially if you look at events preceding the matter before it went to the House of Assembly. And again, when you look at the speed with which
2-3 days
the two arms of government actually effected a monumental change. I will call it monumental because this is an emirate that has been like a jurisdiction under an individual, and someone out of his ingenuity, in quote, decides to bring development to the grassroots. I say, okay, this emirate maybe is too large for an individual to control, and maybe the thing does not reach the grassroots. Decided that, okay, let us put machineries in motion. You know, the issue is immediately after the election, there were speculations that moves were in place to remove the current Emir of Kano.
Exactly.
That's the former governor of Central Bank. It got so rife that people were already waiting for the announcement.
Especially from the pool of results.
But all of a sudden, there was a prayer session organized by the Emir himself, where he said he was organizing that prayer for the state and then for the governor who has just won a re-election bid, and everybody thought they have been able to cover the crack, so to speak. So, but in politics, you don't drop your guard, because if your opponent in politics is a marathoner, that is a distant runner, it's necessary that it's possible that by the time you drop your guard, when you decide to sleep and close your 2 eyes,
you can't play catch up anymore.
Yeah, they come up with that surprise. We cannot go into the minds of the governor and the members of the House of Assembly. We look at what they have told us, but it is now left to us to look at what are the events preceding this sitting. And then, like I said, according to what report we had, this motion was tabled on Monday. And you know, before a bill can become an act of the parliament, it has to go through 3 stages. Exactly. There's something they call first reading, second reading, then second reading, it's given to the specific committee to go and look into it. And it was expected that if we are going to touch on something that has to do with an emirate, they will have organized a public hearing where they will invite people from these areas. This is what we are going to do. We want to have your input. And after that, you now bring it back. The committee will now report back to the committee of the whole house, where that's what the plenary, where they now begin to, where they will now vote on the matter. But so it was not expected that this processes rather will be concluded within 3 days.
So you are saying that with all of this, despite going through the different quarters, did not follow due process?
No, they did, because the public hearing is at the discretion of the members of the House. The members of the House must have given the committee, a special analytical committee, go and look into this thing, look at if there's any legal implication, any implications, and report back to us. How they carry out the thing is now left to them. They bring it back, they report back. If the report is okay by you, you
and
go.
That's my question. There,
you subject it to voting.
Speed, do you think in all of the assessment there would have been due process follow through and through at different stages of reading and passing this?
No. To me, I don't think. I won't say they followed the due process. They did, because those are the stages of a bill becoming an act. But the point is, there's a lacuna. Did you get the input from the people concerned? They can hide under the cloak that are we not the representatives of the people?
Exactly.
At least this emirate we are talking about, they will have members of House of Assembly from those areas. That are we not? But we are looking at how tidy it is. It is possible to get with a lot of things. Maybe I would digress a little. Go and look into the issue of impeachment of a governor or a president in the Constitution. It's those who drafted the Constitution wanted to make it very arduous so that it won't be at the whims and caprices of some people. But we discovered that we have seen in this country where governors are being impeached within 7 days, and they will follow all these procedures. What does it take? The Constitution didn't put a time lag that, okay, you must do this within 7 days. What it just says is that you can do it within 7 days. That means if you do it 1 day, you are okay.
This interestingly also brings to mind the situation as well in Oyo State as well with Governor Ajumobi. Doesn't this raise almost the same picture?
You know, Nigerians are very interesting people. Maybe there are sometimes events in the country will just make us also introduce some comic...
There are in-laws as well, so possibly there was this sharing of information.
Some comic relief. That's why, because Nigerians are beginning to say, yes, it happened in Lagos State, and it cost, so to speak, the governor a lot, because he couldn't get, in Oyo State, he couldn't get a senatorial ambition realized, and even his party suffered for it. If you look at the geographical distribution of the election results in Oyo State. And people are saying, how come that Kano State, where the two of them are in-laws, is it a family issue? But that is not the issue anyway. Let's assume it's just a mere coincidence, because Kano State Oyo is very, very far. It's just that the circumstances are very similar. Yes, I think there's a need for us to go into history. Because, there are some institutions, especially traditional institutions, in some areas that people don't want people to toy with. And Kano State is one example. And that's why when this thing was announced yesterday, and I was discussing with my friend, my own fear or concern was that I hope the security agencies will be at their best, on their alert.
I was just going to ask you, what are the likely consequences of this, and expecting reactions from the Emir of Kano as well? And looking at this fact that we are somewhat tampering with this age-long tradition and the authority that comes with the Emir of Kano, this is stepping on a nerve, you would say.
Yes, if we want to look at the dimension of politics. But let me tell you that if you look at the Constitution, the issue of chieftaincy is primarily the responsibility of the state government. That is why only state governments will have ministry of so and so, local government and chieftaincy affairs. So the issue of chieftaincy affairs is primarily and exclusively the duty of the state government.
Interestingly, now let's talk about the emirates as well as other council heads having roles in the administration of local government area. They are key. But this time around, to what extent do you see the utilization of 5% funds allocated to them from the government, local council revenue? Because some would say if we have these new emirates coming into play, some would say there's a possibility that they'll be tilted much more to the governor, and some have also said this would also give room to corruption.
It has always been there, because don't forget that during the late General Sani Abacha that introduced that reform, that 5% of every allocation to state government, so local government, goes to the chieftaincy affair. And that's why there's a need for us to look at this Kano issue, the emirate issue, holistically. How do I mean? Don't forget, I think it was towards the middle of last year, because it's like this thing has been running for some time, this bad blood, so to speak,
yes,
between the governor and the Emir of Kano.
Emir of Kano.
Don't forget that about, I think it was during the middle of last year, when there was an attempt to rope the Emir into some financial misappropriation to the tune of 6 billion naira. Everybody knew that quickly the House of Assembly set up a committee to look into it. There were even cases, insinuations that EFCC were involved, or their own local EFCC in the state. And according to them, if that thing had proceeded, but continued rather, perhaps there would have been issues. So some people were prevailed upon to drop that matter. And only last week, there were reports that this thing has been dusted and they are going to reopen that thing. You see, it's a very dangerous situation. Now, if you have an emir that was able to sit on top of 6 billion naira, and now that they have split the thing into 5, what it means is that the other emirates are entitled to whatever. There could be area of seniority depending on what because we have not really studied what the act is all about, but we want to know the position. We want to know the grading. Will they put, this new 5, will they be on the same pedestal with the Emir of Kano? Those are the issues we need to look at. That will now determine how the 5% will be shared.
Exactly. Talking about the utilization of this fund, and some would say this would also be an eye-opener, isn't it?
No, it has always, a lot of Nigerians have been complaining about this 5%, that it is not a small money. Because if you look at Oyo State, let's go to Oyo State. It's about 9 local governments that the Oba of Oyo, I can't remember the title again, is sitting on. Olubadan, God bless you. About 9 local governments. And you can imagine this 5%, and that was why some people said what was even in contention was not even the issue of chieftaincy, but rather it was the issue of the money. That how can an individual be sitting over this humongous amount of money, definitely to be subjected to correction. And that was the same thing they raised in the case of Emir of Kano. If you could be accused of playing with about 6 billion naira, then you ask yourself, what happens to a state governor if somebody are an emir? But like we have said, it's a very touchy issue, and I believe that security agencies will be on their toes, because now that people have read many political meanings into it, the tendency is that some politicians might seize the opportunity to set their voice in motion to go and create chaos. Especially Kano has the history of violence. Sorry, I don't mean violence in that violence, of some bad happenings anytime the institution of the Oba seems to be attacked. You remember what happened when the former governor, late Rimi, tampered with institution. It was so messy that some government officials even lost their lives.
That brings me now to what new intrigues or what response do you expect from the Emir this time around, really?
It will be difficult for the Emir to respond directly, because the Emir knows that whatever is happening,
all the fingers are pointed at him.
He's at the center of the storm. And whatever he does will be used as an excuse to, especially when there were insinuations or rumors that the focus was to get him out of the throne. And so any violence that will be traced to him, or any action that will be seen to have precipitated violence, will be a very good ground for them to get him out of office. Because a lot of stories have been coming. Some people have even been taking us back to his grandfather, how the man was removed from office, how he was dethroned. The grandfather of the current, and that his history going to repeat itself. So I expect the Emir to tread very cautiously. And I think he tried to, because immediately after the election, like I told you, there were insinuations that this man was going to be removed, until he quickly organized what he called a prayer for the state, and said the prayer was for the governor, and people thought probably they have papered over their crack. But like I said, in politics, politicians don't go for half.
Now let's talk about the role of the traditional institution now, and the government's excuse for having 4 more emirates is the fact that we are going to see these institutions go closer to the people. How vital is this bodies in terms of development at the grassroots?
Yes, in the real sense of it, they are supposed to be closer to the people. How do I mean? Because if you look at the traditional African or Nigerian society, our obas were, like in Yoruba land, they call them kabiosi. That is, somebody can ask you or question whatever you have done. And there was that respect for that institution. But along the line, interestingly, just last night I was just looking at what has become of the traditional institutions. For example, before the colonial masters came to us, we were using the traditional rulers as our form of government. That is why in Yoruba land they call it Ijoba. That is with the congregation of kings. And all of a sudden, and if you want to talk about government in Yoruba land up to today, they still refer to it as Ijoba, that is government. But if you look at the roles and the relevance of the traditional rulers, on very many occasions, there have been constitutional amendments that people are making case for prominent, or let me say, another role or a better role for the traditional rulers. Because they believe that they can easily reach their people. That is why when there's a crisis, they quickly go to the traditional ruler, go and talk to your people. I remember when late Chief Ganifa was arrested by I think it was Babangida. When he was about to be released, they said they had to release him to the Oni of Ife. That, okay, it's your son, go and talk to him so that he will not be given a problem. But unfortunately, because of the setup of the government structure now, the traditional institution has been relegated to the background. How do I mean? Let us take a state function as an example. If you look at the order of protocol, you will discover that the traditional ruler is tucked very far in the order of protocol. And at times, when they come, the traditional ruler has to stand up for either the president or the governor. And from there, you look at the way we have positioned our traditional rulers. But there have been attempts to rejig the constitution such a way that they will give them prominent role. But at the same time, there are some unconventional way of recognizing them. Like they will have the council of traditional rulers. When issues happen, president will invite them.
But do you think we have enough of track record to say that these rulers who hold prominent offices have delivered on their mandate, hence they should remain unshakable authorities? Because you made mention of the fact that the structure of our government is changing and will continue to change. And if we are not careful, these emirs and obas would continue to dwindle in their authority. Doing a vis-a-vis comparison of the days of old and now.
The days of old, there is a great disparity. Because like I told you, in the days gone, the traditional ruler or the Oba, the Emir, to some extent the Obi, because you know different areas, they have different recognitions they have given. They were supposed to be the center or the custodian of the tradition. And by so doing, they're supposed to be the leaders of their people. But because of the type of government we have assumed, I was just thinking about this just yesterday, that even we said we have borrowed this thing from our colonial masters. But if you look at like Britain, that were our colonial masters, if you look at their forms of government, the Queen still above the Prime Minister. That even if the Prime Minister wants to resign today for whatever reason, he has to go and submit a letter to the Queen. So, but in Nigeria here, our traditional rulers have been relegated to the very far. Yes, some of them, the way they carry themselves, you know that we still have some men of principle among the traditional rulers. We have many of them. Unfortunately,
we wouldn't want someone to mention it because there are some that have.
But unfortunately, you can look at the process of the emergence of our traditional rulers. Like in the olden days, there were ways through which a traditional ruler could emerge. In some societies or in some localities, they have families that must produce traditional rulers. And then you have the processes that they must go through. But these days, the moment you become very rich and you don't know what to do with your money, so to speak, you aspire to become.
What do you expect from these 4 new emirs who are taking authority soon?
It depends on the way the governors that are, or let me say the government that have created these new emirates. It will be difficult for them because they will have to struggle to come out of the shadows of the Emir of Kano. That one is basic. They will struggle. One, because it's an age-long belief, the Emir of Kano.
So the culture will frustrate their emergence?
Might not. That's why I say it depends on how the government will want to go the whole hog.
Okay.
Because the governor or the government can prop them up in terms of recognition, in terms of allocation of this 5% we are talking about, in terms of relevance that they give to them. For example, if they have a state function, instead of inviting only one person, the Emir of Kano, they will invite the 5, and then the same recognition they will give to them. But the question is, how long will this thing take them? How do I mean? What if the governor leaves office in 2023, and the person who comes in is favorably disposed to the Emir of Kano? The tendency is there that if he does not even abrogate this one completely, because it might be difficult to abrogate it when they go to the House of Assembly, they could do it such a way that those guys would not be relevant. But let me quickly say something which is very, very germane. People should not forget the politics that brought Samini to SLS, as they call him.
Emir Sanusi,
yes, Emir Sanusi, into government, into that position in 2014. If not for the then governor, Kwankaso, that was favorably disposed to him, even the traditional council were rooting for the son of the immediate past Bayero. And that was why the government of President Jonathan almost made it impossible. So there's been a lot of politics around this emirs right from his inception. So if this one is taken from political language, maybe it will not be the end of the
Interesting.
politics.
But now Governor Ganduje's integrity came to question with the allegations that made the headlines earlier on in terms of the funds, and well, that has gone down south and has been silent. But do you think now people might look at these new leaders and then almost want to mirror that image of the governor and say,
you mean the new emirs that will be installed? I don't think so, because Governor Ganduje is a political person.
We are talking about integrity here and then their track record as well.
Yes, it has nothing to do, but definitely the fact is that he's going to appoint people that are favorably disposed to him. It is very, very certain. Especially that's another problem that has become of the national institutions. You see people emerging because they are close to the governor, especially in the state. And so that is where the issue of acceptability comes in. For example, look at the case of the Oba of Lagos. It was only about 2 weeks ago, I think it was the Court of Appeal, that put a stamp of authority on his legitimacy for the throne. You can imagine this man has been there for more than 12 years.
Exactly.
That means that thing has dogged that is throne for that year. So that is because of the process that throw up these people now. Maybe that's where you are going, that those people that will emerge, maybe people will say, oh, they are Ganduje's or they are Ganduje's emir. Exactly. It depends on how he plays his politics. But that thing will always be there, that he created that emirate.
Like I always say, he's made history, definitely.
He's going to install people that are very loyal to him. That one is basic. And it's not peculiar to Kano. Like I told you, perhaps if Kwankaso wasn't the governor of Kano State in 2014, perhaps SLS wouldn't have even become the emir. Because he wanted him.
And like they always say, time will definitely tell.
Of course, yes.
We'll take a quick break now, and when we come back, we'll be focusing on Osun Tribunal as well as the back and forth. It's going to be another interesting set of conversation. Don't go anywhere.